welcome to this fun part of the event. We got some great speakers and we're going to kick it off. We're going to probably stay around 30 minutes or maybe 35 minutes. Carry a round of items, and then any of the audience member, if you guys have any questions for any of the panelists or in general question, please post it in the chat window you will see right there. And then we will pick the question and we will try to address them in the last 10 or 15 minutes of the session. So let's get started. I would ask every panelist to maybe briefly introduce, because we are not in the physical setting. I think everybody going to see a different order of the screen on your on your screen. So maybe I'll pick the name. That way we can don't need to confuse each other. So maybe let's start with the junior most, because that's the tradition. So Divir, go ahead, man.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. I'm Divir, 2010 graduate. I'm co-founder of FieldAssist. We started straight from the college, and this particular product is our second venture. So the first one was into QR codes as a technology. Right now, we are helping CPG companies to automate their field sales operation, which includes people on field, retailers, and distributors. So it's kind of a platform which automates their all kind of field sales operation. We are working with around 400 odd customers in India and abroad. 100-member team. Our head office is in Gurgaon. We have regional offices in Mumbai and Bangalore. We are bootstrapped from the very beginning, and the other two co-founders are also from ISM. So that's me.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Ashish.
Hi guys, this is Ajit Gupta. I'm founder and CEO of MyPetrolPump. I'm 2007 mining engineering graduate. I spent about 9 years before starting this venture, and there was some kida inside me, like khud ka kuch karna hai, before it's too late. So I just took a big plunge and started this venture. We're building a sort of an on-demand fuel delivery service for Indian consumers at MyPetrolPump. We are about 2.5 years old startup company. We are primarily based in South India at the moment, about 7 cities, Pune, Hyderabad, Bangalore, and a couple of others. We also went to Y Combinator last year, so that was, I would say, quite an achievement for us. We got a visibility globally in that sense. We raised our seed fund last year about $1.8 million, and now we are working on Series A at the moment. We'll be happy to share our journey and any particular questions in relation to startups.
Awesome. Thanks, Ashish. We will discuss a little bit more in detail in the second round. DP, sir.
Hi. My name is Durga Pandey, DP. I was in 2003, but I took one more year. So I actually graduated in 2004. I liked ISM a lot, as you can tell. I have actually had a almost completely startup career. I worked at a company called Pallav Networks, where we have 30 people. Now it's a $25 billion company. I worked at the second startup it got sold. I worked for about $500 million. I worked at the third startup it got sold for $500 million. And then I did my own and failed, so it broke the pattern. I ran a startup for about 6 years. It was an AI startup in health. One of my co-founders was Ashish, also another ISMite. And after that, I worked at Google for a little bit. So that was my large company experience. Barely survived 2 years and went back to a smaller company. And I just, I'm working on a new one that is too recent to talk about. I just closed the money yesterday. So it's very, very new. But,
awesome. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, sir. Vamsee, sir.
Hi everyone, this is Vamsee. I'm the 2003 mining engineer. I think I should have been part of DP's part. I mean, one more extra year, but fortunately, I was lucky enough to kind of pass all the things, backlogs, and clear everything. This is my third startup, which is the Yardstick Educational Initiatives. I had one in service industry and one in restaurant industry. Both of them didn't really work, so failure is very, very common to me, and it comes natural to me actually, right from ISM days, in which I had so many carry forwards and backlogs. So I have been used to that. So right now, Yardstick per se works with schools in India, UAE, and UK in terms of helping them to teach science and math in a simpler way. I also am working on a tech startup called as yschool.com, which is trying to bring in a holistic learning experience for the children using these virtual technologies. Yeah. So that's about me.
Awesome. Thanks, sir. And Pallav, sir?
Okay, so Pallav Sarma, I'm co-founder and chief scientist at Tachyus. So what we do, so we are basically a data science company, and our specialty is optimizing operations for oil and gas operators. And so far, yeah, so it started in 2015, and so far we are a Series B company. We have raised about $45 million up to Series B. And so far, our technology is being used, I think, worldwide right now in North America, Latin America, Europe, Asia to optimize oil fields. And most operators are seeing about 10 to 15% increase in oil production or a 40% increase in decrease in cost because of the use of our technology. It's a step change in how people run, how oil companies run their operations. So that's where we are really contributing to this problem. I think unlike like DP and Vamsee and all these other guys, I consider myself an accidental entrepreneur because if it were up to me, I'd probably sit in some corner and write some code or basically solve some interesting research problem. But in some sense, I'll talk about this a little bit later, but in some sense, I got pushed into this and I'm enjoying it a lot. It's just a very different and very interesting experience for sure. And yeah, it really feels great to be able to contribute something that really can help sort of change the energy landscape and how energy is being produced.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, sir. And then Amit, sir.
Hi, I'm Amit from 2000 batch mining, same batch as Pallav. So, and after that, I've been all over the place, like almost, I don't know which all industries I have worked across. Okay. So, my first stint, actually nobody knows, my first startup was a very short-lived one, which was in legal process outsourcing way back in, I think it was 2005 or 6, okay, in between two jobs. And, but then the second one, actually not the second one, I then joined Paytm's parent 197 way back in 2007, perhaps the first 100 employees or so. Stuck for 2.5, 3 years, then started an edtech venture called Akshmala Solutions at that point of time. Bootstrapped it to almost $1 million at that point of time. Then went back, ran out of my money, then went back to Paytm Mall, spent almost 5-6 years doing every damn thing there, right from HR to acting as a CFO to incubating businesses, building up a few businesses. Then the mall thing happened. For 2 years, I was heading the mall. Last year, again, I left, got back to AgriTech, which was sort of my first love. And last 6-8 months, now we have sort of actually launched all the products and stuff that we had to launch in the last 6-7 months. And now we will hopefully be ramping up. So yeah, that is it. With Unnati, which is my current agri-tech venture, we are trying to solve the problems in the agriculture ecosystem in India and using financial services as a backbone, and over which then farmers can go ahead and use our platform to purchase inputs, get knowledge, sell their output. So the core agenda is to convert the farmers into farmer entrepreneurs and make them use the digital tools to convert them their family-run sort of thing to a formal business and then make more money out of it. That's the agenda that we're trying.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for everybody's introduction. So as you guys can see, some passionate people working on the startup world for 20+ years even, and done some great work, and we're going to learn more about that. But before that, sir, because this topic is a lot about like building this support ecosystem, and I'm just curious, like back in those days, especially Pallav sir, Vamsee sir, Amit sir, what was the state of internet and entrepreneurship in ISM? Tell us a little bit about that. Some fun story.
Well,
I think.
Go ahead.
Go, sir, Pallav sir.
Okay, I can quickly say a few things. So, Yeah, so in our time, I think, and again, Amit will probably recall, I think the computer center, I think, started when we were in third year, right? If I remember that correctly.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we didn't even have computers at the time. I have not seen computers before that, basically. But I was super excited about computing. And then again, even as you can see, even now, although I'm oil and gas all the way, but my focus has always been computing. So in fact, me and there's another Amit there, not this Amit, there's another Amit in my batch, and we pooled our resources together to buy a desktop at that time. And the deal was that he will keep it 6 months in his room, then I'll keep it 6 months in my room. And that's how we got started, like coding C++ and whatnot.
And
since then. Yeah, it's very
that was the
different.
first computer in your batch, sir?
I think that was the first computer in my batch, if I recall correctly. I don't think anybody else had a computer
Oh, wow.
in their rooms at that time.
And you guys also had internet those days, or just the computer?
I think I don't think there was any internet at that time. It was just the computer and all the CDs that you get.
We had the dial-up connection, Pallav. You remember? We used to go to that. There was this mining lab on the upper right-hand corner of the main building.
Yeah, you're right. And we had that in the computing centers, not in our school hostels.
Yeah. In our rooms. Yeah. In the hostels, the first computers came actually in the final year, I think. Third year of final year was the time when few people like Pallav and PKK, I remember. So, but I remember like most for us, you can understand the best usage was the replacement of the VCR before that.
Yeah, exactly.
For the whole night movie session.
Yeah. Now we have permanent CDs there that you could bring. Needless to say why.
And sir, during your time, you guys didn't have the computer room in each hostel, right? Pallav sir, Amit sir?
I don't think we had a computer room in
no.
Or anywhere. No.
And when was the computer center was introduced?
In library. We had one computer center in library.
Yeah.
That was it.
Everybody got 10 minutes on that. Only final year. Only final year.
I think we had six or seven computers in the hostel too. So I still remember. I mean, we used to take turns to do that. I think
that was later. In our first year, there was no computer.
Not in the first year. Yeah, it's I think around in the third or final year actually. And then I still remember we used to go to kind of hop into this computer science lab and play Age of Empires, Need for Speed. These were the trendier games that time. I don't know what they played. We had to spend the entire nights there and probably wake up after 48 hours actually.
So
awesome.
You guys were the lucky ones that you could play games. At our time, it was a direct connection, which was shut down at 6 o'clock in the evening. So
oh wow.
So Saturday, Sunday were off. So Saturday, Sunday, internet was also off.
Oh, wow. and then, sir, what was the state of entrepreneurship? Like anybody started any company remotely, anything in tech those days? I think even in 2006, like there was anybody I remember who actually had a tech startup.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I mean. The concept of startups, I think, was not even there in our minds, at least not in my mind. I was just happy to get a job somewhere, maybe in ONGC, and have it for the rest of my life. That was the goal of most of
concepts were never ready.
Awesome.
I think there were only three concepts. One is the Ramdhani, one is the mess party, and one is you sit in the canteen and do BC for probably hours together, actually. I think these are the only three concepts. There's nothing called as entrepreneurship there.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So I hope audience gets some sort of sense, what was the state of ISM those days and where we are today and where we're going to be in the future as well. So awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Let's kick off the session now. So Amit sir, maybe let's start this time with you. You had this amazing journey, mining engineer and then getting into Paytm, which is I think $15-20 billion company, and being the early employee and then rising all the way to chief operating officer. So tell us a little bit about that journey. How did that happen and anything exciting stuff from that journey? And then I also have one follow-up questions on Unnati as well.
Sure. So honestly, like when I joined way back in 2007, 197, which is still the parent company of Paytm. Paytm is just a brand. Obviously, we were working on a totally different thing altogether. Okay, and mind you, 2007 still startups were not that sexy and not many people knew about what I was doing. So in fact, a lot of people were quite surprised. What is this company called 197? Okay, and but then I think. God had some great things for me. That is how I would put. Nobody knew what would happen. Like 7-10 years down the line. Okay, but yeah, I did have a lot of fun in my first stint there since from 2007 to 2010. Did a lot of things, had a lot of fun building up, and I think even at that time the pace of growth was nowhere less than what we saw later at Paytm. I think in 3 years we grew from 10 crores of revenue to somewhere around 350 crores of revenue. So that too was like a humongous growth at that point. Then, as I said, went back, and in 2014 when I went back to Paytm, first part time, then full time, and then as I said, like there was some really interesting stuff. And then the only thing that I can say is there was never a dull moment. Every day there was a new challenge. There were new businesses to be built, great funding stories, great build-up stories. The whole demonetization changed the face of the company also. And also, like, it made us actually very, it basically, I would say, forwarded by at least 2 to 3 years what we would have done any which way. Okay. And, but yeah, huge learning in terms of the growth and how you manage that growth. So for example, while I was the HR head, we grew from almost 800,000 people to something around 6,000 or so over a span of 2 years. So you can just think 6 times of the company being like growing in a span of 2 years. People, you know, before that I had a very low opinion of HR as a function. Okay, I'll be very honest about it. But once I did it, I realized that HR perhaps is not only the most difficult one, and it's also actually the most important one, because that is where I would say the men versus the boys are differentiated. A lot of companies get stuck, are not able to manage their people properly. And at the end of the day, the kind of companies that we are talking about, it's all about people and how you manage them. So great learning there, and quite interesting stuff done over a period of time.
Awesome. I mean, yeah, definitely, like, people are the biggest asset in any tech company, right? So this is the critical function. So that's exciting journey, sir. And then how, like, you being a mining engineer, being in a very tech company, and now you jumped into agriculture, you know, tech. You know, like, what's the drive here? What's happening?
So in fact, I was like really scared shit about coding when I was in ISM. Like, everybody used to say that coding is the new thing to be done and you should learn it. So I also picked up the blue colored Rishi Kanigan. I never went beyond the second chapter. So I took a very principled stand that I should not be the one coding. I should actually learn to use the software, because I'm a mining engineer at the end of the day. But then one thing led to another. And
you were learning like Fortran those days, right, sir? Fortran 77 or 90, something like that.
Yeah, COBOL and stuff. The only reason I did some bit of programming was because you could draw circles and color it in COBOL, and that was an interesting thing for me. Okay, so that is how I got into coding at one point of time. But then anyway, I think post that, I've been driven more by, I would say, the kind of opportunities that we are seeing and the ability to build something big and great in a sort of in any area. So for example, when we were what kicked me about Paytm and still kicks me today about the whole business is that it's an amazing sort of a transformation story at the okay, anything impact is huge. Okay, and that is why I somehow latched onto the agri sector. Was quite interested. So as I said, my first stint in agri-tech was more like a services business. So learned a lot, and I realized that technology could play a very, very different kind of a role for rural India. Okay, which while things are obviously, you can build a lot of businesses in the cities also, but the kind of impact that it can have in rural India is way beyond what any city would ever see. Okay? And that transformation potential is what kicks me every day, and what made me sort of get back into an entrepreneurship mode so late in my life, actually. Okay, so and get into sort of again the sort of grind of day in day out building something right from scratch. Okay? So that's pretty much how I ended up into agri tech from mining.
Awesome. So that's very inspiring, and a lot of diversity in your background and taking any challenge. Let's move on to Pallav, sir. Sir, I think you have a pretty interesting startup, Tachyus. You're petroleum engineer, right? So one of the key question I have for you is, like a lot of people think of the startup as just like a purely like a software company, just talking about these, I don't know, marketing product or SaaS of the product. But you built this tech company specifically for oil industry. So you come from that expertise as a petroleum engineer. You already excited about the technology, and then you build this technology for your own core field. And tell us a little bit about that journey and why you think that's a great path to take as well. Because in our, especially IIT Dhanbad, there are a lot of earth sciences field, and a lot of students think like, hey, I'm in say mining engineer, that means I can't even do the tech startup. So we'd love to hear your journey and what do you think about that?
Thanks, Rakesh. Yep. So unlike Amit, I think he has obviously done like all these different kinds of things. I have been like very, very focused, and in some sense, I mean, whether right or wrong, that has been my path so far. I mean, yes, petroleum engineer from day one to today. So, but though I was like a petroleum engineering with a lot of interest in computing, as you saw, like, I was one of the first guys to get a computer there at ISM. Yes, in fact, my first project, I think when I was the final year project, I guess you guys still have to do that. So our project, I think I built like a graphical user interface for one of the open source simulators out there. So it's a combination of like that. So that's the kind of, I always was interested in computing, but I also always interested in energy, because energy is obviously like what drives everything even today, right? And oil and gas is obviously one of the main sources of energy even today and for the foreseeable future. So what I wanted to do is again, for me, as I said earlier, entrepreneurship was something that was not something that I always said, hey, I want to be an entrepreneur on $1 billion company someday. That was not what I ever thought. I always wanted to say, hey, do some really cool research and do some great computing stuff. So after ISM, I did like 2 years in a company called 𝐭𝐤𝐤, which was like it's one of the big oil and gas service companies. And then I came to Stanford, which is really what I wanted to do. I joined Stanford for a PhD, and basically there worked on simulation, which is my passion. It's all computing and everything that I'm interested in put together. So I was doing simulation, and then I also did a PhD in optimization at the same time, because again, as you go into this, and although my ISM days are really like probably my best days in terms of like fun, but my Stanford days are probably my best days in terms of learning, the way I think about it, because it's just the environment in these kind of universities is so different in terms of what you can learn and how you push yourself to learn. Is that I saw this great opportunity to really learn all the kinds of things I was interested in. Did that, then yeah, kept on the same path basically. Okay, that's what I wanted to do. Then I came to Chevron, spent 10 years there, building their next generation simulators and optimization tool that Chevron was doing. And then what I realized is one of the big difficulties when you work in all these big organizations is that you could be doing really good work in terms of research and all, because that's what I was doing. I really loved my job because I was going to great conferences all over the world. I was writing papers. I did not have any deadlines. I mean, that's the perfect job you could have as a researcher, right? So, but the problem was that this kind of technology, when you build this kind of great technology in a big company, it's not easy to get it to use, right? So you are there on one side building this stuff, but the business units are not using this technology because it's just difficult to change the culture of these companies. As a researcher, I have to be also my own salesman to be able to do that. It just is difficult to do, right? So there's some kind of a little bit of a disillusionment in that sense that you're doing all this great stuff as nobody's using it, right? So that's what really drove me to entrepreneurship in a way, because I did not want to become an entrepreneur, but I saw that I can do great stuff as a researcher, but nobody's going to use it. What's the value of doing that if I cannot really get people to see or benefit out of that? So that's how like basically Tachyus started. Even in Tachyus, I'm not one of the initial founders, the way it started. So there's this great, but the CEO, so it's a really great guy. He's now running a $100 million venture capital fund. So he is like this amazing guy, and he's also Stanford graduate. So he's a serial entrepreneur like Amit here and some few others. So he sold so basically sold multiple companies before this, and then he's looking for an industry to sort of disrupt, and they spend a lot of time trying to figure out which is the industry to disrupt, and that's where basically they saw that oil and gas is quite backward in terms of use of data, and so that's what they decided to get in. But one of the things was that they did not have any oil and gas expertise. So that's why I came into the picture, and basically I brought in the expertise to basically build the right technology that can basically sort of have the expertise in entrepreneurship and have my technological entrepreneur knowledge, and we build together a company that basically is hopefully disrupting how energy is produced, right? So I think going back to your question of, okay, this path of, okay, you are right now, a lot of, I think you guys who are doing your whatever, you're doing mining or you're doing petroleum or something that's not directly computing, there is always, I think, a path to entrepreneurship if that's what you want. You have to find the right problem to solve. And one of the big benefits of having the domain expertise is that there are not a lot of people who can understand your problem. That's something you can understand very well. So if you can combine that with either with you or with right kind of people, right kind of others, because sometimes you need support. If you can find the right kind of people who have the other side of the other side of the business, then you can really come up with companies that can be completely disruptive and also very difficult to compete against, because yeah, it's hard to come up with groups of people or other kind of people who can solve together these kind of problems.
And yeah, so that's great, sir. One of the questions I think audience was also wondering, where is your company located? Where are you located?
Oh yeah, so I'm based in San Francisco, close to San Francisco, but our company is kind of global in nature because of the nature of the oil and gas industry. Most of our people are in Houston, but then we have a few people in Latin America, then a few people in Europe. And so yeah, they're basically distributed throughout to basically cater to our clients who are in different parts of the world.
Awesome. All right. Thanks a lot, sir. Guys, because we have started a little late and, things are taking longer, so we're going to extend our session 15 minutes at least. And let's see how that's going. We're having fun conversations. I don't want to stop. Moving on to Vamsee, sir. Sir, you've done 3 companies, as you said. Now you're in ed tech. And then one of the interesting thing about your business, because a lot of people think about startup and revenue means we need to target like US and Canada and Europe, but you are mainly targeting APAC region and UAE and Middle East, right? So tell a little bit about, about EdTech industries. Hey, I think it's your son with you. And then you're mute, sir, by the way, you're mute. And then, talk about this market, the APAC market and Middle East, why you can still build a great company in that region. And I think FieldAssist is doing the same as well. So when we talk about that, but yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay. So, so let me kind of, like I said, one thing is very prominent is I had probably had so many failures in terms of building from the last 12 years, what I've been doing. I had a restaurant business before this. I had a tech business before this, which I don't even understand right now. I mean, Pallav sir has a motivation to even actually code. Or Amit sir, I strongly feel that right now, I'm still afraid of C, C++, even Python by the say, or whatever is it. So one of the things, like I said, I'm lucky enough to pass ISM. So I haven't really learned much in mining engineering. So one of the things I have actually learned is probably solving science and math much. So this edtech thing which we have started, or not an edtech per se, Yardstick is more of a brick and mortar kind of a thing. But Y School, which we have started very recently, is an edtech thing. Is really helping students to learn science much in a very simpler manner. So we train the teachers, we give them learning aids, teaching aids, and do that. So we've seen quite a good adoption in terms of for the last 12 years in India, in UAE, in UK. So coming back to your question in terms of per se, education, I feel, is a very, very difficult market. I was actually talking in one of these breakout sessions too. In terms of, imagine if I go back to one of our professor and say, hey, this is not the right way to teach and there is a better way to teach, I don't think our professor would even listen. And that's the same case with the teachers there. So it's a very, very difficult market to even try capturing. Yeah, B2C has seen a recent success in terms of technology prevalence in terms of that. But taking India as a consideration, which does not have much of a, what do you call it, as a lot of, I would say, there's not much of a quality assurance in India, but whereas if you see abroad in terms of UAE or US per se or Europe, there is a lot of quality assurance which happens in terms of how the education is delivered to the child. So I see APAC per se, there is a lot of mass, but there's a lot of money in the other regions in developed nations like UAE or let's say Europe or US in terms of, because they really invest in trying to do something. Good or bad is a different, it's a different question to be answered at a different level. But there is a lot of spend which is happening in terms of edtech right now.
Awesome. And then you talk about this new startup. Is it already launched? Is it official, or where are you at?
It is official. So I think it's been 3 months now when this lockdown has been announced in India. So like I said, the Yardstick has always was always actually a brick and mortar kind of thing. So what we actually do is we create small kits which can be prima facie. When you look at K to 12, you do not have the kids do not have lab exposure till grade 9 or grade 10. So what we try to do is we try to solve this simple problem of how do you actually give them a concrete experience in terms of by not creating a lab. So we try to create a small lab in a small packet and then start distributing them in the classrooms. So that's what we were actually doing. So once this is announced, this lockdown is actually announced, so schools said that they can't even afford anything right now. So that's when we started this yschool.com, YSKOOL.com, wherein we try to bring in virtual platform for children to kind of explore their interests, build their interests, and exhibit their interests. So, I mean, a child can learn coding or French or German or art or wellness or let's say cooking, anything he wants to actually. He can just log in there and then explore that. And we're trying to kind of partner with schools. Fortunately, because of this COVID situation, we were able to partner with around 540 schools, and we have kind of the users have come down. I mean, we have kind of acquired around 1 lakh plus students actually right now.
Oh, 100,000. So, yeah, that's 100,000 students is a big success short term. By the way, one of the audience
has been kind of a blessing as well as disguise for me actually. Yeah.
One of the audience saying, sir, that their kids are using your Yardstick. So that's amazing.
Oh, okay.
Awesome. Cool. Let's move on to DP sir. DP sir, extensive, startup background, right after your MIT, grad school. You've been in Silicon Valley for 16 years or so, from Palo Alto to now your own startup. By the way, congratulations, or the new startup fundraising you already closed, I think yesterday you said. Yeah. So that's the right timing, and because it's stealth mode, so maybe in future event we will talk about your current startup. But one of the things I know about you, sir, is that you raise a decent amount of money, especially from big shot like Mark Benioff, CEO of Salesforce. So tell a little bit about your journey, especially in the fundraising front. How did that happen? And even in the current round, if you want to talk maybe by not disclosing people's name, and it's a lockdown period, and seems like you're pretty good at raising, money, even if it's low down.
It's Zuckerberg.
Yeah, sure. By the way, Vamsee is the entrepreneur with the most grit that I have seen. I think I have not seen many, even in Silicon Valley, like him. Just refuses to die, and so he has been able to.
It's not about me. I don't know the name. Mark Zuckerberg. That's where he has raised the next for this company.
Yeah. So I can tell you a little bit about fundraising. Instead of telling you a story, I'll just maybe give some tips about raising, because that might be more useful if you're thinking about raising a company. So yeah, we raised money from the last startup. We raised about $1 million, and a good chunk of that came from Mark Benioff. I think the really important thing to remember is, like, when you're raising money, you're a salesperson. You're not a product person. It's a big difference, because your comfort zone, even if you think you're a salesperson, actually you're an engineer. That's what you studied. You didn't go to Delhi University and study economics or whatever, right? You actually went to ISM and studied engineering. So natural comfort zone is engineering. And even when these are the things to do, it feels, and it's annoying, it's out of your comfort zone. So you have to become a salesperson. You have to assume that role, and at least one of the founders has to assume that role. So the way that I raised money is that, basically it was copying, learning from the best. I remember in ISM, I literally went and copied people's, final projects and things like that. So I applied the same mentality new idea, but you don't have to reinvent how to raise money. So when you raise money, go and study the decks. That's where you'll learn most of what you have to learn from the deck. So you go and look at like Uber's deck, it's publicly available, Airbnb's deck. There's one from Nimble Storage, which is very good. And really study it and then create your deck and put them side by side and go slide by slide and see what are they saying. So the point is not just to create 𝐂𝐤𝐤 and submit it, but the point is that you create something and then you go slide by slide and say, when the audience came to this page, when this person was presenting for Uber, what did they think? And why did the entrepreneur put the slide in this sequence? And why did they ask this question? Because they're controlling the discussion by putting the slides. You are controlling the discussion. What were they trying to convince? Because your goal is to convince investors that you can build a very large company, right? So it's really, I went and studied, and I am, before there was a point in which I emailed Benny off, and I was actually driving to Las Vegas, which is about 10 hours away, on a Friday. And then I got an email back. So I said, oh, I need to respond. So I went to Vegas. And then for the whole weekend, I sent all the family out. I sat in the dark room and I just worked on the deck and I presented it maybe about 300 times. I just kept presenting and looking at the deck. And when you do that, when you present something, you use a specific language so that people can understand. When you write, then you go back to the 𝐂𝐤𝐤 language, right? And the goal is to make the presentation language show up on the deck. The deck should read like someone is talking, not like someone wrote a thesis. And so I would say, oh, that's why what I wrote, but this is how I'm explaining it. So let me change it. And every slide's title would be like a sentence that I was talking. So if people just read the title of each slide, they would get your whole story. That's the point. So that's the deck part. Second thing is like, I read a lot of articles, especially this time, about how to close deals. So I went and read a lot of sales articles about how to, how to get prospects, how to engage them, how to create urgency, how to close deals. There's a lot of knowledge on the internet because it's a sales job, right? So that's the second part. Third part is when people give feedback, you talk to an investor, they say, oh, it's very hard, it's very tough, right? So don't be delusional, because sometimes the reason why you become an entrepreneur is because you're irrational and you are delusional, because otherwise the rational thing is never to do a startup. But when people say something, be intellectually honest and say, okay, is there some weight there? And the question is not whether the startup can fail. Of course, the startup is going to by default fail. But if my assumptions are true, how big can the startup be? That is the right question to ask. And because every startup is a bet, if it can be really big, then you have a chance. And then don't give up just because somebody says that. Have a clear quantitative story about why that will happen, right? Hustle. It is your job to find an intro. It is your job to go and pitch people. Like, you move heaven and earth. You do whatever you have to do to basically get those intros, right? I have a few more points. I'll be quick. Pick a large market. Don't pick a small market. Be able to say, this is the quantitative version. Either because an analyst said this, then you can use that number. But otherwise, be honest and say, how large can this market be? And all things being the same, pick a big market. It'll be much easier to raise money. Try to pick a large multi-billion. Like if you're trying to start a company and you have no idea, I would say start a software company. Logistical companies are very hard. I'm not saying don't do that if it is your passion, but software companies are easy. Enterprise companies are much easier than consumer companies, right?
Awesome. That's an amazing story. Let's move on to Ashish. Ashish, you built some amazing startup, and I'm hearing a lot of news about it and rest of the community as well. One of the interesting part of your story, which you also talked in the introduction, was getting into Y Combinator. We have a lot of aspiring entrepreneur right now listening and watching. I would love to hear, like, how did you get into the YC, and what was the benefit, and how it actually helped you kind of grow your business? So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me for this session. Well, YC came in a little bit later, so we were already 1.5 years old startup before we went to YC. And YC was also like, so the story is like in first 1.5 years when we bootstrapped the company, we built a business of almost 3 crore rupees monthly revenue, 500 B2B customers, operationally profitable. And we knocked more than 100 investors' door in 1.5 years, and everybody said no. Okay. So it was like, when we look, you have a profitable company, you have a paid customer, you have a 3 crore rupees monthly revenue. Why on earth nobody is investing? So we were like, me and my co-founder were doing a lot of self-introspection, sitting in a bar, 9th of April. And then my co-founder says, Ashish, let's give it last attempt. एक Y Combinator करके है startup. So why don't we apply for that? You know. And I said, यार छोड़ो यार रहने दो कोई फायदा नहीं है. But he said, let's do it anyway. You know, we're sitting here. So I said, fine. So we just opened up, our laptop and went into their Y Combinator application form, and then we found that last date to apply was already over. It was 31st March, sitting on 9th April. But there was a little line at the bottom that says you can still apply, and we may consider your application if we don't find many interesting applications. So we just, while we were drinking beer, within half an hour, we made an application out of fun, and then 2 days later, we got an email from YC that, okay, we would like you guys to come for an interview. So we said, okay, fine, let's go for an interview. So we went for interview, no preparation whatsoever, because we literally have given up our startup that, this company can survive itself. We were organically growing 10%. We were building decent business. We said, fine, if you're not able to raise money, we'll still build a decent business out of it. And then we'll basically hand it over to somebody and we'll go for our corporate jobs, So he said, okay, fine, let's go to YC interview. Went for YC interview and 10 minutes back and fire questions. And then same day in the evening, we called and they said, yeah, you're selected for Y Combinator. Please come to Silicon Valley. So that's how we got into YC, like no preparation, no idea, no whatsoever, late application. We went there. The Y Combinator batch started 4th of June and we had a term sheet on 5th of June and we had money in our account in weeks, $1.8 million.
So you took the opposite approach of what DP was saying, I guess. No preparation.
It's like,
YC is an unlocker. If you go through YC, it changes the game. It's a game changer.
Yeah. Definitely there was, the investment came in, primarily because of we got selected for YC and we got a good visibility also, especially among the investors in the Valley. Because earlier being in Bangalore, being in India, we only had access to Indian investors. But yeah, I mean, startup is like that. And, where you think that you have control, over it, you have perfected everything, nothing will work. You just never know. And it worked. And to even tell you, I mean, the startup journey that now we are like almost 2.5 years. We raised $1.8 million last August. And then we got the number one VC, most famous VC in the world. I would not name it. A $5 million, term sheet or offer, I would say. No, it was not term sheet, but offer. And we denied it. Okay. It is like February this year. We denied that offer. We said we want $10 million Series A. And a month later, COVID hits and now nobody is replying to our email. Okay. So now we're back on square again. So now
So moral of the story is don't lose the hope, but at the same time, don't be too excited. You never know, right? Awesome. That was an amazing story, Ashish. Yeah, so go ahead, Amit sir. You were adding something.
No, so I was saying it's a daily boom and bust cycle. You have to just survive it.
Yeah. Just keep your motivation alive. Keep you doing the right things which you believe, and keep working on it. And Y Combinator, I can add a little bit, on the Y Combinator, if you get an opportunity to go for Y Combinator, definitely take it. And you would have not only great experience in terms of, spending time with almost 200 startups in 3 months from all across the globe. You would learn a lot more from the 200 startups that you would spend 3 months together as compared to the Y Combinator partners. And it will give you a lot of ideas. A lot of ideas that you can apply to your startup business model as well, just by learning from it. So that is the greatest learning that you would have if you get to Y Combinator.
Awesome.
Visibility, the global visibility. Yeah.
Great story. Thanks for sharing, Ashish. Let's move on to Divir. Divir, FieldAssist. One of the things which I'm super impressed with FieldAssist is you guys bootstrapped. And now you're 100 plus employees and you're doing all these things without any external funding. And in startup world, like everybody talk about like, hey, there's the Series A, seed round, and kind of do the celebration. But I want to kind of know a little bit about, or I want to let the audience know this is another way to build the company even without funding, right? So tell us a little bit about your story on like why you chosen that path and like how this has been a great way to build a company like FieldAssist.
Thanks for having me. And exactly like you said, when we were starting the company in 2010, I think we were hit by the e-com wave. And it's not that we didn't try to raise money, but whenever we were approaching investors, they were just saying us that, we need businesses which has infinite scale. Now that was something which was, Latin and Greek to us. Like what does they mean by infinite scale? So I think when we started reaching out to people, especially in terms of raising funds, we identified that it takes a lot of time, and can we invest that time and energy to rather build a business and bring the profitability? And good thing which happened with us was we got a great pool of mentors for us, and in fact at the time when investors were behind us, they asked us that why you need money, and it should not be you raise because for the sake of raising it. You should have a framework, and you only raise when you find that that money can probably bring the growth which what you want to achieve in 3 years, probably in a year's time. And definitely when we deep dive into those things, we identified that actually we didn't need money. We were growing probably more than 100%. The company was profitable, and it was giving a lot of control to us in terms of what we want to execute, and rather being chased by the investors to do things what they want to do. So I think bootstrapping, if you think money is something which is the driving factor for you to grow, then definitely yes, people should chase it. But if you can do it without external funding, and I'd say our target market is we are into B2B SaaS, especially in Indian context. Uh, Things will not turn around in probably in a 6 months time. When we were selling our products, we were educating our customers that why should they invest, and especially my target segment is companies into CPG space, where most of them are family owned. So to sell something which is on a technology side was really difficult. So you have to complete that hard part of educating people, then building a brand trust, and then the referrals start coming. So if you have that pressure of external investors sitting on your board and then pushing you for probably try to do things which you don't want to, and eventually lose focus. So we thought that it's better this way, and instead of I'd say raising equity, we opted for debt, because we thought that again it's a good way. And so that's how we kept things really simple. We always believed in selling something before building it to get the cash in, and we still work on that principle that cash is the king. So if you have a healthy cash flow, everything follows. And actually this is turning out to be a good way for us to scale.
Especially I think in today's world, cash is definitely the king regardless. Awesome, amazing story, guys. We're going to take a little bit more minutes, but I'm going to ask everybody, I'm going to push a poll. I have one question to the whole audience, so I'm going to push a poll. Please participate. The poll will open for maybe a couple of minutes, and then I'll show the results to everybody. But let's move on to the next round. Let's ask a 1 minute each, and please give like the most important tip for the entrepreneurs right now listening. So give that one most important tip and take please 1 minute, and then we will conclude the session and move into the final. Maybe Amit sir, you can start as a most senior person. Are you on mute, sir? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think perhaps the most important thing to my mind, and it also comes from the larger time that I've spent in terms of the age, it's persistence. One should be very, very persistent. And I really love what Divir was saying, that, at the end of the day, you have to be spending time on whatever you are building. Nothing gets built in a year or two. It takes years to build something really long-standing and outstanding. So persistence and definitely passion to do what you want to do. And if you have these two things, you will find your way. There is no there's no dearth of the ways that you can get things done. But yeah, persistence and passion, and those two things will make you do whatever it takes to be successful. Okay?
Awesome. Thanks. Moving on to maybe Pallav sir, what's your tip for the entrepreneurs here?
Okay, so I think me and my co-founder, we strongly believe in this concept of the lean startup. So there is a very famous book by Eric Ries. If you have not read it, please read it. I think that's really, I think at least for these kind of companies, the kind of companies we are in the space we are in, it's really important to ensure that you stay lean, and so that one of the big things that you're able to go through like the boom and bust cycles that a lot of these industries have. And the other is, one of the main reasons for being lean is to not waste time doing stuff that nobody would want. I mean, you really want to sort of do stuff that people actually want to accept. So a lot of the time, even before you build a product, it's a great idea to test out, say, not even build the alpha version, just like a deck or so the UI, for instance, may be good enough to show to your potential customers, understand it's something that they want. So you don't waste time building stuff that basically nobody would ever use, right? So that's the real, I mean, if you follow an approach like that, you can save a lot of time and effort and build the right thing that eventually people will like and want to use. That's what I would say is my one point.
Awesome. And over to you, Vamsee sir. What's your tip for the entrepreneurs?
I think, Amit sir and Pallav sir have taken most of it, but I think what Divir has actually mentioned in terms of don't raise the money until unless you see, because the same thing here. I mean, if you have sales, most of the companies, if you have sales, you will have money. So if you're not able to sell, it's not the money issue. It is actually the product fit, which you will have to go back and see where you will have to really place. Just to back what Divir was mentioning. But I think one of the most important tip which I keep doing is, if you have an idea, keep expressing that idea. Do not really be taken aback that if you keep sharing across your idea, someone will copy and things like that. That's not the case. I mean, someone will not have the same passion as you have. Keep talking about it. Keep talking about it to whomever you find you think is worth sharing it across, because the feedback really matters actually. I mean, as an entrepreneur, I keep talking about a lot of ideas which I keep getting it across, and probably out of 100 ideas, probably nothing materializes, because when you start speaking across to as many people as you internalize that idea. I mean, you really build the passion when you keep talking about it. You understand what are the nuances of that. That's very important. Most of us actually fear that or don't express that idea to as many people as it is required to.
Awesome. Thanks, sir. By the way, one of the audience absolutely loved your background.
Oh, thank you.
Over to DP, sir.
So I think it's really important before jumping into a startup to convince yourself. There's actually an essay by Paul Graham. I think the title is How to Convince Investors, but it's a really good essay because, by the way, if you have not read Paul Graham's essays, you should go and read all of them. They are really good. But yeah, you should really convince yourself why this is a good idea, and you do it without building, because building is deterministic. Most products are not self-driving cars. If you can imagine it, you can build it. Especially if you have ever wrote software, you know that you can build something. You should have a good theory. Like, you have to be hypothesis driven, and I'll share another article about that later. But you need to have hypothesis, and as you do the startup, you keep having hypotheses and you keep testing them out, and you have a lot of micro hypotheses. So you need to be able to convince yourself and say, okay, this is what I'm starting. 6 months later is going to look like this. 2 years later is going to play that game, because it costs nothing. And many times you'll realize that this is not a good space. People are only going to use this product once a month. You know, it's not valuable. It's a cool idea to build an app to meet someone for lunch, but how often do you meet someone for lunch? So you need to play that game out quantitatively and really build conviction, because once you're convinced, you'll be able to convince employees to come in. You'll be able to convince investors, or whoever you want to convince, customers. That's, I think, important.
Awesome. Thanks, sir. Guys, as it said, I ran the poll and I already shared the results with you guys. So 68% people want this event happening every 3 months. And if I add another 4-month one as well, so seems like around 85% people want this event in 3 to 4 months. So there we go. So I know the answer and we will organize that. Let's move on to Ashish now. Ashish, what's your tip for the entrepreneurs?
Yeah, my tip would be if you want to build a big company or if you want to build a company of your dreams, prepare yourself mentally, physically, and all possible senses that you have. You have to prepare yourself because it's going to take a long, big role, and it's a long journey. So you're not in a short haul; it's long haul. So you have to prepare yourself for that. And one more thing I would say that before getting into that journey, it would be better if you can work upon your assets and liabilities, minimize your liabilities as much as possible before you get into that, because once you're there, you don't want to be distracted by all other nuances. Okay. And it's going to demand, building a company is going to demand every bit of yours. Literally.
So Ashish, are you saying don't get married?
Well,
just kidding.
If you can defer it, that would be the best. If you're not married, if you're married, then definitely you have to find
then you are stuck.
It demands building a company. I mean, you all, are much more senior experienced to me, but at least from my experience, I can say that it demands a lot. Building a company is not a working, 4 years of building a startup is almost like 30 years of your corporate life. At least I can tell you from
I feel teaching kids is difficult than building startup.
And you're doing both, I guess. You're building startup and teaching kids. So can't be worse.
Not my kids, but yeah.
Absolutely. Just like kids, startup is going to be a big family. In at home, you have a couple of kids. In startup, in a company, all your employees and people, non-people, everybody is just part of your family, and you're the father or the person in charge of it. So yeah, prepare yourself before you get into anything, and then because it's going to demand everything of yours.
Awesome. Thanks, Ashish. Moving into Divir. Please, go ahead.
I think everybody has already covered, but especially I'd like to say to the budding entrepreneurs who are still studying, I think college is a great place for you to find the right set of people. For me, I think people plays the most important role in order to build a company. And as probably people have said that great companies are built on great product. And when I say great product, you need people to build it. So that is one. I think second is you can read as many as success stories, but I'll say eventually what you have to learn from is the failure stories, because you'll build your success your way. So there's no recipe to properly, which you can copy. So I'll say failures are really important for somebody to experience it. And third is, which DP sir also said, is you need to be a salesman. Because if you need to find a co-founder, you have to sell your idea to that person first. Probably you have to sell it to yourself. So I think sales is an integral part, and if you learn it faster, the better.
Awesome. Thanks, Divir. Guys, this has been super fun. I scheduled the event for 1.5 hours, but I think we're close to 2 hours now and nobody actually left. So amazing, fun conversations. So thanks a lot, panelists. I think we're going to pause it here because it took a little longer. But I really appreciate and thank for your time and sharing your stories and tips with the audience. With that, I would like to thank all the volunteers and organizers, and I want to thank all the panelists. I want to thank all the audience and all the people who participated in both the breakout sessions. You guys have been amazing crowd. I really had good time. So with that, let's conclude it. And everybody in India, have a good night. And in North America, you guys are great, Saturday. And I know you guys woke up early to attend. And we will see you guys next time.